I think we move on here to the 7-time champion, one of the greatest of all time, Jimmie Johnson. So this is a difficult one to trim it down to top 3 moments. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can go into this decision, whether you want to look at wins, championships, anything like that. So do you want to go first for this one, or should I?
Sure, yeah. I'll go first for this one. My number 3 moment, going back to 2005 for this one, the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte when Jimmie Johnson passes Bobby Labonte out of turn 4 to steal the win away from the 18. I don't know why, but that has always been one of those replays and finishes that has always stuck in my mind and been one of those quintessential Jimmie Johnson moments. The Lowe's car winning at the time at Lowe's Speedway, just fantastic stuff. I will always remember him going to the inside on 2 and the commentary going, "Oh, you can't pass there," him tucking back behind on the backstretch and then getting it done on the outside after out of turn 4. Just amazing stuff, a quintessential Jimmie Johnson moment, and one of the earlier Jimmie Johnson moments as well, going back to 2005 as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. It didn't make my list, but I strictly went for my list, something that I watched, essentially. So I didn't watch anything prior to 2007, obviously with the Daytona 500 there that I just mentioned. So I'm sticking in 2007 for my first one here, and it goes back to my birthday in 2007 on November 4th to 2007 at Texas Motor Speedway. The great battle between himself and Matt Kenseth. It was an incredible battle there to finish it off. Because they're 2 great paint schemes that they had on it, Cobalt Tools, and then the red and blue kind of 17, whatever the sponsor was there. But those were 2 great paint schemes and a great finish in that one where Johnson was trying so hard for so many laps behind Kenseth and he just couldn't quite get past him. Kenseth was on 2 tires, Johnson on 4, and Kenseth was just blocking him and just went into every which lane that Johnson wanted to run in, and then eventually he got by him on the bottom in turns 1 and 2, coming to the white flag, and then he finished the pass off in 3 and 4. So it was a great little battle there between himself and Matt Kenseth. So I'll always remember that, and it just added to that it was on November 4th. So it was just a great race there, and my first season of watching NASCAR it was in 2007 was almost as good as it gets in my opinion. But yeah, that was a great one for myself.
Yeah, that's a fantastic one there. Let's go along to number 2 for me, and this is another one that I definitely don't remember watching, but when you look at both the history of Jimmie Johnson and Hendrick Motorsports, I almost thought about putting this one number 1, to be honest, and that's the 2004 Bass Pro Shops MBNA 500 at Atlanta. Jimmie Johnson wins 1 week after the Hendrick plane crash in which 10 members of the Hendrick team passed away. Of course, he won the race at Martinsville, but the week prior, but just all the circumstances during that race, it was the week after that's the one that is really etched in everyone's memory. All the victims of the crash being on the hood there, winning the race over Mark Martin as well, and just seeing the emotion from Chad Knaus immediately after the win, all the Hendrick guys in victory lane after that one. That's just one of the more emotional victories in recent NASCAR history, at least, and that one's got to be in the top 3 for me.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's not my top 3 just because of what I said previously, but it's in my honorable mentions just because it has to be. It's Jimmie Johnson at his finest, and the emotion from just pure elation and relief kind of thing. It's just a great win for uniting that team back together after the bits and pieces that broke apart over the past week. I mean, it was just heartbreak. We lost the like of Ricky Hendrick, an up-and-coming racer in himself, Rick Hendrick's son, obviously. And we lost John Hendrick as well with his 2 twin daughters in that one. So it's an emotional one. I mean, I don't remember it, obviously. I didn't watch it, but from watching highlights and stuff like that and it being brought up over the years of watching it, it's quite the moment that Jimmie Johnson went out there and held off Mark Martin and won at Atlanta. So that's a great one, Kyle. It's definitely in a top 5 for sure. In anybody's list, it would be in mine as well, even if I didn't watch it. But my second one is going back to 2008 for the Summer Auto Club race. And you may think, what the heck happened here? Well, that was my first ever NASCAR race. So the fact that I got to see Jimmie Johnson win one of his 83 wins is something that I really appreciate now. Maybe not at the time I was really wanting Kyle to win, but I wanted him to go for the weekend sweep that weekend. But it was a great kind of a weekend there. I'll never forget it. Summer at Auto Club, the scorching heat in California. I missed when it had 2 dates, and the fact that they're tearing that track down to bring it into a short track is still a little bit sad to think about for myself. But I've always got an emotional attachment in terms of that. In my first season of watching it, I was a little bit of a Jimmie Johnson fan. I'm not gonna lie, but then
that's some breaking news.
Yeah, so I was a big Hendrick Motorsports guy when I first got in because Jeff Gordon had the flame paint scheme, one of the best paint schemes of all time. So he was my favorite driver when I first got into the sport. And then I eventually realized that Kyle Busch was the guy I really wanted to root for the next season after that in 2008. So by the time it got up to that point in the summer of 08, I'd really found my loyalty, and it hasn't really broken since. So at that point in time, Jimmie Johnson running the Jimmie Johnson Foundation car as well. Beautiful paint scheme, one of the best paint schemes I remember from watching all my years of NASCAR. So that one's just a little bit more sentimental. It's not going to be on anybody's list really if they're thinking back to best Jimmie Johnson moments. There's no number wins that he broke in that race or anything like that. It's just something towards myself. So that's why that is my number 2. But it's not my number 1 because there's one that I'll forever believe that is one of the best finishes in NASCAR history. But that's my number 2 with the Auto Club Summer Race in 2008.
All right. Well, you mentioned a finish there, so
we're gonna have the same one. 100%.
I'm not going to mention my honorable mention because I feel like my honorable mention might be your number 1.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and say my number 1 first.
Okay.
I think because my honorable mention is one of the greatest finishes in NASCAR history, and my number 1 is a little bit different. So I will go with my number 1. We may have the same number 1. I don't know. But my number 1 was a pretty easy pick for me. After I from like 2009 to 2010 until like middle to later 2016, I stopped watching NASCAR as much. I would basically only watch like the restrictor plate races and then select races around that. But I wasn't as invested in watching every single week like I was before that when I was a lot younger or after that, mainly because, and I got back into the sport primarily because, and it's no secret, Cole Hearn is from my area. He went to my high school, and seeing him become a crew chief for a top level team reignited my interest in both racing and NASCAR. And then in the later 2016 to 2017 season is when I really got heavily invested back in NASCAR. And obviously now we're doing a show about it. So it was quite clear how that's gone. But in that 2016 season, we all know how that ended. The Ford EcoBoost 400 at Homestead, in which Jimmie Johnson won his 7th and final championship in NASCAR. It's just one of those where it wasn't necessarily one of those victories that you kind of expected going into things. It was one that he quote unquote stole, I guess you would say. But you know what? Nobody cared that he stole it because he went ahead and he tied for the most ever championships with 7, with obviously Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt Sr. One of the great moments in the last few years of NASCAR as well, just seeing the elation of that 48 team going out and doing what I don't think a lot of people expected of them in that race. So for me, that's my number 1 Jimmie Johnson moment.
That's a good one. It's not my number 1. It's in my
I believe I know what your number 1 is, and it would have been right there.
I don't think you do. Really? I don't think you do what my number one is.
Okay. Go for it then.
But for my honorable mentions quickly for Jimmie before I get into my number 1, obviously 7 championships across the board is an honorable
you can
mention.
pick any of them.
And it's any of them. Before I get into my number 1, I just wanted to pose a question to you. Which one do you remember the most, or which one do you think was the best championship that Jimmie Johnson won? Just out of curiosity, because we basically watched the entire stretch of that he won, besides maybe 2006. But besides, what do you think is his best championship or the most memorable one?
I mean, the most memorable one for me, is just 2016, just because it is that one where I was a little bit older. It was the first one that I remember getting back into the sport after being younger for the previous ones. But man, there's just so many great championships
so
to look at, man. It's ridiculous. The guy was so good for so many years. You could say any of them, and you would have a pretty darn good argument. I'll go ahead and I'll say 2007, I believe it is, when he won 4 of the last 5 races, winning Martinsville, Atlanta, Texas, Phoenix here. And that's just an insane streak to end the season. And that's just Jimmie Johnson and that 48 team at its finest. They just found a second gear when it came chase time. And they did it year in, year out. And sure, if you look at overall points at the end of seasons, Jimmie Johnson, I believe, only led in 3 seasons, but that was intentional because that team would just try stuff for the first 26 races or however long. And then when it came chase time, they'd figured out all the stuff that would work and they would just be on another planet. And that's why they won 5 straight. But I think 2007 there, winning 4 of the last 5 is just pure insanity.
Yeah, that is mine as well. Just because I was a big Jeff Gordon fan, and that was Jeff's biggest shot to win a championship. He was so consistent. I think he had 32 top 5s or something, 32 top 10s or something like that. He barely missed the top 10, but Jimmie's incredible 4 out of 5 to end the season got Jeff. And he just slipped up, I think, at one of those races, and that was it. That, it just turned the entire tables. And if Jeff Gordon wins that championship, you're looking at probably him in that conversation of greatest of all time. He's probably just a little bit behind the likes of Earnhardt and Petty, just because of the lack of championships. But Gordon could have won more than that for sure. But that was one that I think really he missed out on. And then after that, it kind of got out of control for Jimmie's success, and then also then after 2010 I'm like, okay, I'm done. I can't believe he's won this many. Basically since I started watching this sport I hadn't seen a different champion. So
maybe you were the jinx.
Yeah, that's what I have told myself for many years. But his 7 championships, I'll give 2007 as the most memorable one for me, and then 2 finishes to kind of in my honorable mentions before my first one. This is why I don't think you have my first one. It's different than what you think. So the 2 ones I think of is for honorable mentions. 2008 Kansas with Carl Edwards, the incredible video game move that he pulled there with Carl Edwards, that is, going into turn 3 and just not letting off the gas.
If it works in the video game, might as well try it.
Exactly. And it was just an incredible finish. Jimmie didn't really have much to do with it, just the fact that he was in contention there. But I think back to that one as a great finish. And then also the 2011 Talladega finish.
Oh, okay.
That's the one I knew.
That's the one I thought would be number 1 there. Okay.
No, but it's an honorable mention. One of the greatest finishes in NASCAR history. 4 wide across the line. Hendrick Motorsports, all 4 cars. Then you've got the Childress duo, and then you've got the Roush duo. It was insanity. And then Jimmie Johnson, the furthest back, starting the final lap, won the race. So it was quite the finish there. But my number 1 is not maybe his biggest win. It's 2007, the spring Martinsville race. That is my number 1 Jimmie Johnson moment because of the incredible finish between himself and Jimmie Johnson. I feel like that was kind of the changing of the guard in some respects over there at Hendrick Motorsports. It was, I'll never forget how they kind of directed it or produced it there at the end, having the split screen of the 2 crew chief and Steve Letarte and Chad Knaus, and then having the battle on the bottom of the screen. And then Jeff Gordon was right there for so many laps, and he didn't want to put the bumper to him. And then Darrell Waltrip's calling, he's going to move him. He's going to move him. He's going to move him. And then they touch once, twice, drag race, Jimmie Johnson. I don't know. I just think that's my favorite Jimmie Johnson moment. It's going to be overlooked by the likes of those other ones that I mentioned. But for myself, coming into the sport, seeing the greatest paint scheme basically of all time with Jeff Gordon and then Jimmie Johnson, the 2 greatest probably at that point in time in the sport, going at it at Martinsville, a great track, a short track racing. I can't get much better than that. So, and the fact that the bump and run didn't necessarily work, it was pretty awesome as well. And I would have liked to if it wasn't in the COT cars, but at the end of the day, I'll accept it. So those are my Jimmie Johnson moments. But there's a list of many.
Oh, there's so many that you can like. The guy's just won so many races. There's so many that you could pick from, and I think that we got a good batch of 6 or 7 unique moments there. There's just so many to pick from. And we've talked about it recently as well, both with Jimmie Johnson and Lewis Hamilton, in appreciating things in the moment of greatness. And looking back on Jimmie Johnson's runs, I do wish that when I was younger, I appreciated it more when I was watching. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel that way, because seeing these last, 3.5 seasons of Jimmie Johnson has been definitely a little bit disappointing, just to see him just not be able to break through for that final win or anything like that. And just seeing the just bad luck or struggles of that 48 team definitely makes you wish that you could go back in time and appreciate that success in the moment.
For sure. It's crazy that it's already at an end for Jimmie Johnson in the NASCAR Cup Series. And I mean, I grew up watching this guy, loving and hating him kind of thing. It was a love-hate relationship. But at the end of the day, I'm very thankful to have watched one of the greatest of all time in NASCAR. Just quickly before we end the talk about Jimmie Johnson, I just wanted to give his career stat line, because it's pretty incredible. So he's got 685 Cup starts to date. So 686 will be the time after Phoenix this upcoming week. It could be 687 without the COVID case kind of thing earlier this season, but with he could have made the playoffs if that was the case as well. So 7 championships, tied for the most all time with Dale Earnhardt and the King Richard Petty. 83 wins, tied for 6th all time, tied with Cale Yarborough behind Darrell Waltrip and Bobby Allison. So he was one short. I remember when he won at Dover, and he had the special helmet to Cale Yarborough, and then he had his sights set on Bobby Allison and Darrell Waltrip, because everybody thought he would obviously break it. Like, Jimmie Johnson's still winning races, and the fact that Dover race is going to be most likely, unless something miraculous happens this weekend,
could you imagine
his final race win? It's crazy. I would have never thought at that time, but I remember thinking to myself, I hope he didn't jinx himself here with this helmet, where he's looking ahead to the next win total here at 84. And it's crazy to think that not that he did, but the fact that he never got there to get to 5th all time, which is obviously something that he had set his sight on. And I thought he would for sure win a race this season after the speed they showed last season at the end. We did a RTA Sports Update kind of show last season in our production class, and I said it on that show. I like the speed that Cliff Daniels and Jimmie Johnson brought at the end of the season when they shift from Jeff Mendering to Cliff Daniels atop the pit box, and that never really came to fruition, unfortunately, for Jimmie Johnson. But he's got one shot this weekend. Maybe he can upset the championship party, but with those kind of stats, it's incredible. Also, on top of that, 231 top 5 finishes, 373 top 10s, 36 poles. I thought it would be a little bit more, but nonetheless, 36 poles, and then an average finish in his career of 13.1. That doesn't justify his championships and everything like that, that number. The past 3 seasons has totally brought that number up. But before that, I imagine it was near the 10 average finish mark. But the past couple of seasons have brought that up a little bit, when in reality, it's hard to really look at these past 3 seasons and try and put the numbers for that into the greatness that Jimmie Johnson's career was. So it's incredible that it's come to an end, but it's something that I'm very grateful to have watched for so many seasons, and likewise for you too, Kyle. So just quickly for our visual viewers, if you are not subscribed to the Green Flag, make sure to subscribe. We have a YouTube channel now. And for the visual viewers behind me, I've just done a little bit of a shout out to Jimmie Johnson. I went on a little bit of a scavenger hunt, and I found all of the Jimmie Johnson diecasts that I've ever owned. They're kind of here, if I can do it correctly. Yeah, they're on this top row here behind my head. So I've got a whole bunch of Jimmie Johnson cars there, along with his 2007 championship car behind me as well. So I don't try to show off my Jimmie Johnson stuff too much, but for this one, I thought I could make an exception. So I wanted to pay tribute to the 7-time champion, and something that we may never see again in terms of 7 championships. It's just been incredible to watch. So any last thoughts on Jimmie Johnson, Kyle? I know we'll talk about him on Monday after the show and just briefly here, but this is our last chance to really thank Jimmie Johnson.
Just finally here, if it is the final win, and we do kind of expect it to be that way, it is also kind of fitting that it came at Dover, the track that is probably, I don't think many people would really argue, to be honest, his best track in his career. And getting that final win, what we would assume to be, unless he can pull off the miracle at Phoenix this weekend, it is fitting in that regard. But just going to be, again, one of those bittersweet moments this weekend, being able to see him in NASCAR likely for the final time. Now, we don't know if there's going to be one-off races in the future. We do know the IndyCar schedule. We don't know if there might be a one-off in the future. That's just something that we don't know at this point. But as of right now, we expect it to be his final race in NASCAR, certainly his final race in a full season. So going to be very appreciative to watch both him and Clint Bowyer go out for the final time this weekend.